Maria clutched the thin hospital blanket around her trembling shoulders, her weathered hands gripping the fabric, like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to this world. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as tears carved paths down her sunken cheeks. She hadn't seen her husband in 43 years. Not since that terrible morning when she woke up alone in a cold alley. Discarded like trash, her memory fractured into 1,000 painful pieces. But the man walking through, the door wasn't the young husband who had abandoned her. This was someone else, entirely, someone whose face she'd only seen in newspapers and on television screens and shop windows. And what he was about to do would shake the foundations of everything she thought. She knew about betrayal, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption. Marcus Wellington had built an empire from nothing. The son of a factory worker and a seamstress, he'd clawed his way up from the streets of Detroit to become one of the wealthiest real estate developers in the country. His face graced magazine covers, his name opened doors, and his signature appeared on charitable foundations across America. But success had come at a price he'd spent decades trying to forget. That morning started like any other. Marcus sat in his penthouse office overlooking the city, reviewing contracts for a new development project that would transform an entire neighborhood. His assistant brought in his usual black coffee and the morning papers. He barely glanced at the local section until a photograph caught his eye. A grainy image of an elderly homeless woman being loaded into an ambulance. The caption read, "Unidentified woman found unconscious in downtown alley. Hospital seeking information about Jane Doe." The coffee cup slipped from Marcus's fingers, shattering against the marble floor. He knew that face, even ravaged by time and hardship, even barely visible in the poor quality newsprint. He knew those eyes. They were the same eyes that had looked at him with such trust on their wedding day 50 years ago. The same eyes he'd seen filled with confusion and hurt that terrible morning when everything changed. Marcus had been a different person then, young, ambitious, and desperate to escape the poverty that had defined his childhood. When Maria became pregnant, panic consumed him. He wasn't ready. He couldn't be tied down, so he made a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. After a heated argument one night, he'd given Maria sleeping pills dissolved in warm milk, telling her it would help her rest. Then he'd driven her to the industrial district and left her in an alley with nothing but the clothes on her back and $50 in her pocket. He'd told himself she'd be fine. She had family. She'd go back to them. He'd convinced himself it was better this way. A clean break before the baby came, before he was trapped forever. He disappeared, changed cities, changed his name slightly, and rebuilt his entire life. And he'd never looked back. Not once. Not until this moment. The hospital was a 30-minute drive, but Marcus made it in 15. He burst through the emergency room doors, his expensive suit and commanding presence parting, the crowd like Moses at the Red Sea. When he announced, he knew the identity of Jane Doe. Nurses and social workers descended upon him with clipboards and questions. But Marcus pushed past them all until he reached the small curtained area where she lay. She looked so small in that hospital bed. The woman he'd married had been vibrant and full of life, her laughter like music. This woman looked like a ghost, her skin paper-thin, her body frail. But it was her. It was Maria. "I know who she is," Marcus said quietly to the doctor. "She's my wife." The words hung in the air like an accusation. The doctor looked confused, glancing between the wealthy businessman and the homeless woman. "Your wife?" "Sir, this woman has been living on the streets for years. She has no identification, no medical history we can find." "Are you certain?" "I'm certain," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "Her name is Maria Elena Reyes. She was born in San Antonio, Texas. Her favorite color is yellow. She used to sing while she cooked. And I abandoned her 43 years ago." The confession rippled through the hospital staff like shock waves. Whispers began immediately. Someone pulled out a phone. By the time Maria woke up 2 hours later, the story was already spreading through the city like wildfire. When her eyes finally opened, they were clouded with confusion. She looked at Marcus without recognition, and that hurt more than anything. The doctors explained that Maria had suffered from severe trauma-induced amnesia following her abandonment. She'd spent years in and out of mental health facilities, homeless shelters, and the streets. She remembered fragments, a husband, a lost baby, betrayal, but the details were scattered. Like puzzle pieces she couldn't fit together. Marcus sat by her bedside and did something he should have done 43 years ago. He told her the truth, all of it. He confessed his cowardice, his selfishness, his unforgivable betrayal. He told her about the business he'd built, the fortune he'd accumulated, and how none of it had ever filled the void her absence had created. He told her about the nightmares that still woke him some nights, the way he'd searched for her, face in every crowd for years before, forcing himself to stop. The room was silent when he finished. Maria's eyes, clearer now, studied him with an intensity that made him want to shrink away. Then she spoke, her voice raspy from disuse. "I had a daughter," she whispered. "They took her when they found me. Said I wasn't fit. I never saw her again." The words were a knife to Marcus's heart. He'd not only destroyed Maria's life, but had stolen their daughter's chance at having both parents. "I'll find her," he promised. "I'll use every resource I have. And Maria, I know I have no right to ask for anything from you, but I want to take care of you now. Not as your husband, I lost that right long ago, but as someone who owes you everything." What happened next shocked everyone who knew Marcus Wellington. He didn't just pay for Maria's hospital bills. He bought a beautiful care facility on the outskirts of the city and transformed it into a state-of-the-art recovery center specifically, designed for homeless, individuals suffering from mental health issues and memory disorders. He called it Elena's house, after Maria's middle name. He hired the best therapists, doctors, and social workers. He personally oversaw Maria's care, visiting her every single day, not as a husband seeking forgiveness, but as a man determined to right an ancient wrong. He read to her, brought her favorite foods, and sat with her during the difficult therapy sessions when memories returned in painful waves. But Marcus didn't stop there. He used his considerable influence to launch a citywide initiative to end homelessness. He partnered with local organizations, funded job training programs, and created affordable housing units. He went on television and shared his story, his shame, his redemption arc. The public was divided. Some called him a monster trying to buy absolution. Others saw a man genuinely trying to make amends. 3 months into Maria's recovery, Marcus's private investigators found their daughter. Christina was 42 years old, a social worker in Seattle, married with 2 children of her own. She'd been adopted by a loving family but had always wondered about her birth parents. The reunion was emotional and complicated. Christina was angry, hurt, confused, but she came. The first meeting between Maria and Christina happened on a sunny afternoon in the gardens of Elena's house, Maria's. Memory had improved significantly, though gaps remained. When Christina walked through the garden gate, Maria knew. Some bonds transcend time and trauma. They held each other and wept. 2 strangers connected by blood and loss, beginning the long journey of becoming mother and daughter. Marcus stayed on the periphery, knowing he didn't deserve to be part of this moment. But Christina surprised him. After spending time with her mother, she approached him, her eyes hard but not hateful. "What you did was unforgivable," she said. "But what you're doing now, trying to help people, taking care of Mom, that matters too. I'm not ready to call you Dad. I might never be. But maybe we can figure out what we can be to each other." The story of Marcus Wellington and Maria Reyes became national news. Some criticized him, pointing out that no amount of money could undo his betrayal. They were right. Marcus knew they were right, but he also knew that doing nothing would be worse. So he kept working, kept building, kept trying to turn his privilege and resources into something meaningful. A year later, Elena's house had helped over 300 individuals transition off the streets. Maria had her own small apartment in an assisted living community, surrounded by friends and visited regularly by Christina and her grandchildren. She would never fully recover from the trauma of those lost decades. But she was healing. Marcus never asked Maria to forgive him. He never asked to reconcile their marriage or pretend the past hadn't happened. Instead, he showed up every day to face the consequences of his actions and to ensure that Maria lived the rest of her life with dignity, comfort, and love. On the 1-year anniversary of finding Maria in that hospital, Marcus stood at a press conference announcing a $10 million endowment to expand Elena's house into a national network. A reporter asked if he'd finally forgiven himself. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, Forgiveness isn't something I'm seeking, he finally said. What I did can't be undone, and I don't deserve to feel absolved. But I can spend every remaining day trying to be the person I should have been 50 years ago. That's not redemption. That's just being human. The city never stopped talking about Marcus Wellington. But the conversation shifted. He became a symbol of something complicated and real, the possibility that even our worst choices don't have to define us forever, that accountability and action matter, and that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is face our failures and work to make the world better despite them.